Hello everyone. Welcome to our second day of this ARV training with the Winning Entanglements online program. What we're going to do today is the feedback for our baseball game prediction yesterday, and it was a hit, which is always a lot of fun. And then we'll get and talk about Forex, including actually putting up a tasking. We will not do that tasking today, but I will discuss that after we get into feedback. Now, the final score for the Bruins Athletics, the Milwaukee Brewers and Oakland Athletics was 4-2. The line was 8. So we indeed had a hit. And I want to talk about feedback, but I think what I will do first is send it out to the CARV group so you can see what the group manager does. I actually encourage people to wear that hat as well when they feel very comfortable doing the remote viewing. It turns out you actually just learn when you see it from the angle of being a manager. So now being the manager, we did task 1 yesterday. We did the second step yesterday, which was setting up the group prediction. So now we do the outcome, which is step 3 or the third task for the general manager. So let's do that. And we put in our group, which is CARV. And it just verifies that the side 1 indeed was under in terms of our prediction. And you can see the line here. It doesn't make it pretty for the group managers, but it's pretty easy. Someday maybe I will make it prettier. But there's CARV. And so this is the outcome. Independent of what happens, you always put the correct outcome, so the feedback will be associated with the appropriate target. And the target is, of course, the truth point. So there's CARV. Side 1 is under. There's under. And I will put here the score. Total runs was 6. Line was 8. Therefore, we had a very nice hit from day, I can write whatever I want to, from day 1 of the webinar. And I love happy faces. Okay, so then I always verify, no matter how long you do this and how good you think you are, every now and then you make mistakes, and people are very good at understanding that. But there's side 1 under CARV. Okay, so I hit submit. We get this from the server, which goes to the just the general manager sees this, but an email has been sent, so you can actually check your emails and you should get one. It's just putting in the words again, and I'm just making sure. Yeah, okay, so that's that. Let me check my email, since I actually submitted. Only the people who submit predictions will get an email. There's mine. And there you go. So you should have an email very similar to this. And don't do it now, because I want to talk about it first But after I finish discussing feedback, we will take some time and have you actually do it now during the webinar, and then we can talk about how all that felt to you. So, so I've now sent out the email. The message and the mindset when you do your feedback is to learn. That's the most important message. Over all these years, I've focused on it, tried to do what I think is best, and I always come back to the learning. The feedback is when you know the truth. The feedback is when you can review what has happened and learn from it. Now with the hits, to learn, and it's pretty easy to be happy here. What about misses and passes? It's the same. In fact, often you can learn more from the misses and the passes than the hits, because you might say, you know what, I really didn't do a long enough cool down. And you probably would have noticed that back when, that you might have rushed it and stuff like that. There will be information from your subconscious, and that's who you're listening to while you do your feedback session. It's all about this communication channel, and now you've got the truth about what happened, and you just have the intention of learning. And is there a good book? Can I tell you exactly how to do this? No. What I can advise is just learn to do this as you're learning and doing the associative remote viewing, that the information comes from the subconscious. It's not going to come from a book. You might get some guidance from me and from people like me, but basically after you sort of get the basics, you're going to get it from yourself, because all of this is very personal. The remote viewing session is yours from your subconscious. The feedback is the time you also want to expand this communication channel and learn. So it really is learning about your space self. And again, you're involved in the process, and I just think it is so important that we maximize our happy moments. And you're in a long-term, rather challenging, mysterious, and fun process to be involved, and to even want to be involved in expanding your personal precognitive capabilities. I mean, come on, that's really kind of cool. And you should be happy with the whole process that you're involved in. And as part of the feedback session, kind of recognize that. I found this one just today. If you don't learn to walk, you don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn by doing and falling over. And that's kind of the attitude when you get misses. It just happens. You're involved in a process which the intellect will not understand. Do you think your intellect understands how you walk? That's a very complicated process. And yet you learned that from when you were very young, and you do it just fine now, rather naturally. Precognition, I believe, will become like that for you if you stay with it and keep having the intention to learn and improve and use that effortful approach we discussed yesterday. So the feedback session. Precognition, as we discussed yesterday, really begins with this session. We know information can go backwards in time. Some of you did it yesterday. We had some very nice sessions yesterday, which led to the hit. And um, um, the truth point is what you're about to see, which is where the information source is. Okay, so really it begins there. It seems to flow backwards in time from the truth contained here. Also, you need feedback. How else are you going to know if your prediction was correct, a hit or a miss? How are you going to learn? So feedback really is an important session, and having that mindset will just improve your precognition. This is the ideal time to really learn about and improve, open up your communication channel between your conscious mind and your submerged consciousness, your subconscious mind. Okay, so any questions or comments on this? You know, I discussed it so much yesterday. I'm discussing it now. If there are no questions and comments, you didn't get a feedback email. Oh, let's see. Okay, John, what I'm going to do is, okay, let me, God, I'm trying to think of how to fix this. Yeah, but you're in, let's see, I didn't get a feedback email. Well, I didn't send out the feedback. Okay, yesterday I didn't receive the target. No, but you, John, did you get, I don't want to take everybody's time. We can do this separately, but let me just ask you one question. You did get the tasking at this Johnny.Mac. I also see Glenn. No, you emailed it. Oh, okay. So you may not be in the group. Okay, I'm going to take a look, John, and I have access to yours, so I will get the feedback process to you as well. Let's now take, okay, I had one other question. Glenn, if you, I don't know if you were here yesterday, I don't think you were, but if you will look at the webinar from day one and hang in here with day two, you'll actually be pretty much ready to go. It's not that difficult. And then a few questions to me via personal email and you'll be set. Okay, John, I'm not going to look at your problem. I'm going to go on mute and stop talking. I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. I presume the rest of you did get the emails, and so you will get your personal feedback. Take a look at it, get into it, as I said, from the perspective of the subconscious, really getting the target and learning something. Have your transcript out there, mark things that are good on the transcript, really work it now. And I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, there's your 5 minutes. Let's talk about feedback a little bit. Yeah, actually, perhaps a lot. First, let me turn off my stop here. Okay. So, John, you should have in your email box. Yes, okay. Okay. Did everybody else get their feedback okay? You guys can actually turn off. You're welcome to do the, okay, Julie, thank you, and Crystal, great. But why don't you turn off, become live, and talk to me? I think it'd be good for everybody to hear. You know, Crystal, how did your feedback go? Why don't you unmute yourself and, you know, tell me how it felt, what you did. So, you know, share with everybody. Good.
Okay. I'm looking at the picture and it was, or the photo site, I'll use your terminology, and it was between the two, the stronger correlation to my transcript than the other one. I had scored the other one 0, so no correlation at all. But my issue is still, I think I do too much AOL. I do too much, like if I get an arch, my brain says, oh, this is like a cave or something. And so instead of just being able to make the arch, which might be somewhere in the picture, I jump way too quickly to naming things that then takes me off track. And I see myself do that time and time again, and I see that with this one too, because I had some elements such as colors, shapes, and all that, but within my transcript I had sort of made it more than it actually was.
Well, recognizing that is terrific, Crystal. That's just what you're supposed to do. The stuff that you got right, did you do anything on your transcript, like circle it or underline it, any more than just note it?
Do you mean now during the feedback session or
Yep.
originally?
No, during the feedback session. Now that you know the stuff that is accurate.
No,
Okay, I do recommend that because it then focuses on the good stuff. It says, hey, sub, look, you got that right, you got that right. And then what you might do is on your transcript, or some people do it on another sheet of paper, do just another little sketch of it and just another few low-level words which would in fact tell your sub, hey, you know what, next time you might do something like this in addition. In other words, basically suggesting a good way to communicate further. But at the level that your sub is already talking to it, you know, it tends to talk, especially early on to you, give you information at the level of a youngster. You know, it doesn't really usually know big words. It describes things pretty simply, and we don't want it to name, as you know, with the AOLs. So you might just add a few simple words and sketches like that. That's a suggestion for all of you. Okay, anybody else? What, you know, how did it feel? Do you really appreciate seeing the truth and understand how the perspective that it all begins here makes sense? Don, how about you? I'm not sure we've ever talked. Are you? Turn on your mic and talk to me. Come on. It's good for everybody. Some people don't have mics. Harry, how about you? Or Glenn? Don't want to share. Okay, that's okay. Hey, the viewer is in charge. I do hope you got...
Hi, Marty.
Okay, good. Glenn, excellent. What was your experience?
I come in late, so I'm trying to catch up. Unfortunately, I wasn't available yesterday, so I haven't done the session. I'm just going through it now.
Oh, okay. Uh, Yeah, watching it, but watching it if you don't care about Forex. If the most important thing to you is the ARVing, you could watch it now, and then we can, you might have some questions which would be good to talk about. And Harry, thank you. I appreciate that you're at work. So do whatever feels best for you, Glenn. But that first webinar really laid out ARV. What I'm going to do now is talk about Forex, but the bottom line is it's still ARV. The most important part of it is ARV. The specific application sometimes has slight variations, but not much. Okay, so let me go into Forex now. And the precognition really is the same. It's binary ARV. The clarification, if you will, and that's what I'm going to spend time on here, is first you have to understand the market you're in, and then you have to understand exactly what the possible outcomes are. Often when I talk about this, without giving details, I simply say up or down. But when you're working in financial markets, you must be more precise than that, and that's what we'll talk about now. So first, let's get into a bit more about the Forex and why it's an interesting market to use ARV on. First of all, Forex stands for foreign exchange market. Okay, I think you know that now. And there's a future market and a spot market. The spot market means, for example, banks are exchanging money in real time with other banks. Or big companies. A big company, Walmart, wants to open up a store in Europe someplace. Well, Walmart might want to take from its bank account $5 million and transfer it to euro dollars in the city where they want to open up a new Walmart. So this is a real important market. It's used every day, and it happens to be the largest financial market in the world. Daily, not weekly, not monthly, not yearly. When I first saw this number, I didn't believe it, and now I know this number is low. Other people have told me it's well over $5 trillion per day. So this is the way monies get moved around between countries that all have different currencies. Okay, so this is a big market. Now, it's different than the like the New York Stock Exchange, because there are a lot of different places where people do this. Sometimes it's just bank to bank. There are central places that the banks use as well, but there isn't any central dealer. There are dealers all over the world doing this. Now, we do it with a very big broker that has lots of liquidity, and you can see the size of things, and there are bids and asks at the level of tens of millions of dollars. So we're not anywhere close where I think we're being noticed yet. So now, the currencies are traded in pairs, right? The example I gave you, Walmart needed to exchange its US dollars into European dollars so it could buy products and pay people in Europe. So they're always traded in pairs. One of the big pairs is the European dollar, the euro dollar versus the US dollar. But the US dollar versus the yen would be an example, and I'll show you virtually all the major examples in a moment. Now, you have to realize there's obviously no difference between buying or selling, even psychologically. You know, in the stock market you can short, but there are psychological reasons why people don't like that. You're going against the government or the country or whatever. But here, clearly, there's no reason and no restrictions because people are doing it both ways. European countries want to convert their dollar into US dollars so they can do business in the United States. So there, at no level is there any difference between buying versus selling. And this market, unlike the US stock market, is basically open 24 hours a day from 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday night to about 5 p.m. right on Friday. So it's in the evening. So it is really closed over the weekend. The rest of the time, except they take short 15-minute breaks once a day, the different currencies to set up their computers and to check things, but that's about it. So it's basically open all the time. Now, what makes it useful for ARV is the high leverage. We like to do short-term trades. I'm like to limit the trades, in fact, to 24 hours, though the one we're going to be doing now is going to be longer than that. But I like to be able to get in and out relatively quickly so that we can keep stats, so that you can get lots and lots of practice and continue to get better and better. You know, they say practice, practice, practice like a doctor or a shaman. So I really do like to turn these things around as opposed to do, you know, month-long trades where it takes a long time to get statistics. Well, the way you do that is with leverage. And Forex gives leverage up to 50 to 1. What I'm doing with interactive brokers is 40 to 1, but that's terrific. What that turns out to mean, and I'll make this a little clearer later with real numbers, is but what that means is that you can turn around in a day with just modest moves 10 to 20% of the why am I blanking on the word? The margin. They actually sometimes call it differently in these markets, but it's equivalent to margin. The margin money that you have in your account that gets set aside for the trades, in a modest move, you can make 10 to 20% of that, which is the way, in terms of the wagering that we do, is definitely of interest. 10% of your margin is very interesting, perhaps a little bit on the high side if you wager wisely, but that is certainly an interesting level. As opposed to the raw move, if you didn't have this leverage, you know, typically you get maybe 0.5% or 1%. Now there's something called the majors. These work in pairs, and the pairs are indicated here: the euro US dollar, Great Britain pound US dollar, the Australian dollar, which actually is the one we're going to be doing, not the euro, and the Japanese yen. This is the Swiss franc, this is the Canadian dollar, this is the New Zealand dollar. So these are the majors. There's the most activity with those, and they all involve the US dollar. So it's called the majors. But I mean, come on, Europeans and the Japanese want to do work together. All these other combinations are out there and are certainly open for us to trade. They're available on Interactive Brokers and all the other major Forex brokerage firms. But those are called cross-currency pairs. Now, there's sort of a basic, what they call a basic lot, which is $100,000 of whatever the first currency is in the pair. So the example we were talking about here, and let's just talk about it, the euro dollar versus the US dollar. A typical lot, but you can trade in the spot market, the actual cash market, in any amount you want. And it turns out the futures, they do have lots of 100,000, but they also have lots of 10,000, and now they're even getting to micro lots, which is like 1,000. And I think this is for speculators, small speculators who want to get in and learn, and also maybe learn about this. But the market is now very, very broad, and you can get in at any level you want. But to understand, and all of this, of course, just scales. So let's understand the basic lot. 100,000 euros, okay, dollar euros is like one typical lot. That would be worth $114,389 US dollars when what you see a price of the euro being 1.14389. Okay, so that's the meaning. When you see this number here, $100,000 of this is actually worth 114,000 of this. Turns out, I'm telling you this so you understand Forex. What you're about to see is it moves, and a price, all you really care about is, does it move up, does it move down, and even this kind of is more of a detail than you need to understand, but we're trying to learn about Forex and currency trading, so that's why I'm telling you that. Now there's one new term if you've never done Forex trading, and that's called a pip. In all of the matches with the US dollar, the pip will be just like this. Well, except maybe the Japanese yen. Was the Japanese? Yeah, the Japanese yen is different, but let's not worry about that. The pips are defined by the third and fourth place after the decimal point. So this would be like 8. This is 38 pips. That's typically the way they talk about it. On a time scale of a few minutes, things might change by a pip or so. So that's why this is a reasonable kind of unit. So the fourth place would be a change in that is a change in 1 pip. 1 pip for this $100,000 one lot is worth 10 US dollars. So a change from 38 pips to 39 pips for a $100,000 lot, and you'd only have to put up 1/40th of that, which is maybe $3,000. Okay, this is $10, 1 pip. So 10 pips is $100. So those are the numbers to just sort of have in your head in terms of how this all works. In terms now of looking at real data and how we're going to connect up with it. So this happens to be the Australian US dollar, which is kind of the baseline that I've been using in my groups, and that's because of the flexibility and the volatility associated with the way we're using it in ARV, and I want to make that now plain to you. This is a daily candle chart. Each one of these lines is one day. It's called a candle because it's colored. Sometimes they use ticks for this red area. So let me just show you. Let's look at this chart, this 1 day of action here, and I'll show you everything that is contained in that, the information. The top of it was the high of that day. The bottom is the low of that day. The fact that it is red says it was a down day from the open, which is this price, and the close, which is this price. So, it turns out if I were to show you a plot of IBM, if I were to show you a plot of any of the other Forex pairs and set the scale bar so the high was near the top and the low was near the bottom, and you didn't look at these numbers, which are the actual prices, and these are the days, they all look like this. They go up and down and they oscillate, and sometimes they go up faster and sometimes they go down faster, but they basically look like this. The key here, and these numbers, I hope you can see it, this is a 0.79, the Australian dollar versus the US dollar on this range, and this is a long range. This is to the beginning of June back to August, each one of these being a day. The range was from 0.79 down to 0.68. But the scale here, this is 0.7500, this is 0.7550. So this is 50 pips, which is equivalent to $500 for a single lot that you might have to put up, in this case, $2,000, $3,000 in terms of margin. So you can see the leverage is well over the 10%. That's why this is of great interest with the leverage, because in a day you almost always get a 50 pip move here. Typically we're using 40 pips, and I've done an analysis a while ago that showed you got that about 90% of the time. And that was 40 pips. Okay. In terms of the action on a shorter time scale, this is the same chart we looked at here, but starting right around here. So if you focus right here for a moment, you can see that is right here. So in terms of the dailies, we just have less days shown here, but same exact chart and information. Here we have 30-minute bars. So this is the action in a 30-minute period. So if you look like here from 0.7400, here you are 0.74025. That means each tick mark here is 2.5 pips. So in every half-hour period, you can see we're getting maybe 5 pips. So, hey, if you wanted to predict a 5 pip move, you would feel pretty comfortable you would get that, in 30 minutes. And this is what a 5-minute bar, candle bars, look like. And you can see this happened to be the very end of the day. A lot of people were selling for some reason, and you got a pretty big move compared to other things on this particular day. But here are some good moves as well. And let's just see what a typical move. Here's 0.738. The next tick mark is 0.73805. So each of these ticks from here to here are half a pip. So 2 ticks is 1 pip. So here's 4 pips from here to here in 5 minutes. So you can see you get a few pips move every 5 minutes or so. So that's the action, if you will, like the action in a sports game. How many runs do you typically get in a baseball game or a basketball game? Hey, in 5 minutes, you get a lot of runs in a basketball game. What we're examining here is the exact equivalent in this particular financial market, so that we can now say, let's make a reasonable kind of trade. Here is now what we mean by trade up for one of our typical Forex trades in the Australian dollar, US dollar. The number might be slightly different for another Forex pair. Also, let me tell you, everything I'm showing you now also works for stock options, because the options have enough leverage in them that you can do this 10% of the money that you have to put up there. You have to buy the option, but nevertheless, in a day, it's on the volatile options, you can easily get 10% movements. So the idea is the same. The idea is the following. When we say up, when the ARV prediction is up, make an up trade, what we do is at a specific time, so associated with the trade up is a specific time. I typically use 8 a.m. Pacific time, which gives me the time I need in the morning to look at all your information, your transcripts, your confidence rankings, and to make a decision. And then the trade goes in at 8 o'clock at whatever price it is. I put in a market order. So I now have a price that I bought. Well, I'm expecting this to move up 40 pips based on the analysis we did, and that's part of me as a tasker. When I say trade up, I have 40 pips in my mind for that task. So that's kind of the baseline. We fool around from time to time and change that, but this is the baseline. And for any specific tasking, this number is defined at the beginning as the part of the tasker, typically 40 pips. What do? I put in a limit order. Just like in the stock market, in the Forex market, you can put in limit orders, which basically say, if the price moves up 40 pips, I'm going to sell and take my profit. That's what I'm predicting. I can put that in and I take my profit. So I'm hoping the market, and this is time here, so I'm hoping the market will move like this and go up to 40 pips. I'm out, and that's the end of it. And that gives you your up feedback. However, as I think you all now understand, we're not at 100% yet, and so there are going to be times when we're not going to get to 40 pips, but the market may in fact go down. So we put in stop orders. That's what it's called. It's a protective stop order at 40 pips below. If the market goes down here and somebody else puts in an order 40 pips below, we will put in a market order. So we will get out right around here. Period. I make these the same because I am very big on the baseline order being a 50-50 proposition, so it makes the statistics a lot easier, and I just find it more balanced, and I'm the group manager, so I can do it. If some of you, and there are people who keep saying, hey, why don't you put the stop further down? But there are all kinds of arguments both ways, and I don't do it. If you want to become a group manager, you can do it another way, and that would be your definition of up. But for me and in my groups, I do this definition of up, which makes this, if things were random, a 50-50 proposition. But of course, we know it's not random, and so we are making money at 65%, and now some are doing better than that. So if you understand this one, the others are all analogous. The down would be analogous to this. So we come in at a specific time, we put in a limit order, 40 pips up, we put a stop order, 40 pips down, and all of the brokerage Forex firms and brokerage firms have what's called one cancels the other. There's an order that goes in which permits me to say, if this goes off first, since I'm now out, if I bought $100,000 here, I'm going to sell $100,000 there, I'm out. I don't want to leave this order in. So it's one cancels the other. Whichever one goes first, the other is canceled, which allows me to go about my day. I'm not interested in watching this all day long. So the order is in there. So it's a little bit like the baseball game that you don't watch. You put in your bet, put in your wager, and you don't have to watch the game. The game will do its own thing. And you can check it whenever you want, and you will know whether or not you had a hit or a miss, depending on which one of these goes off first. Now there's one other aspect to this, which is I have multiple groups. I do not want to have, also I only have a limited amount of margin, I guess, but I limit each of these trades to 24 hours. So if it's a very quiet day, and if you looked at those prices, there were some quiet days. 10% of the time with 40 pips, this will go kind of like this, and it'll be the end of the day, 24 hours. So it'll be the next morning, 8 a.m. the next morning. And before I put in a new trade, at the same time, I'll take out the old. Actually, I do this 5 minutes before. But if at that point in time it's up, that'll be a hit because I'll be selling at a higher price than I got in. That'll count as a hit. I'll get out at market at a price which is in the up direction. However, if it ends down here, it will be a miss. Now this is necessary so I can give you feedback. You know, we could wait, but we don't. So within 24 hours after the trade is put in, I will get feedback. But often it occurs within the same day, and you might get feedback that afternoon if I go back and check, or for other reasons, not checking, or it happens after 20 hours or 24 hours and it's in here, it might be an extra day until you get your feedback. This idea of having to be very specific of what you mean by up or down is critical, because that is what leads to an unequivocal feedback choice for, I don't know, for in many ways everybody, but the group manager has to know exactly the association of what up means so that the feedback photo sites turn out to be correct. So when you get your feedback, it has built in it all of this in terms of the details of the trade. And I guess I want to say one more thing. Most of the time, you should ignore all of this. When you do your remote viewing session, describe and sketch your feedback target. When you do your feedback session, you're working your feedback target connected up with the remote viewing session, and none of this matters. Here is the trade down. So when the prediction is down, the two choices are up or down or pass. When the prediction is down, you come in at 8 in the morning, in my case, and you put in a sell order. And now the limit order is to buy that back 40 pips below, and then the stop is 40 pips above. So it's exactly analogous, and so is the buy at a specific time. The slightly different version is what if there's a pass? What if there's a group pass? Or what if you're doing this on your own and you pass? Well, then what you do, you always have to have feedback. It's the, okay, you have to have your feedback to complete the process, to do the learning. So what you do now is at 8 o'clock, you note the price and you follow the stock action, and the first one of these lines that it crosses is your kind of cyber trade. It's not a real trade now because you didn't put anything in, but if it hits here, then it was an up move. If it hits here, then it's a down move. And again, if it does neither, you wait until 24 hours and you note what happens. Okay, let me just stop here and ask if there are any questions, because that is what Forex is about, and that is how we trade it. Okay, I'm going to assume you feel reasonably comfortable, or you want to let it sit in. I guess I'll add one more. John, every single one of the Forex houses that treat Forex, and Interactive Brokers has one, Forex.com has one. Interactive Brokers requires a fair amount of money to open up an account, like $10,000. Forex.com doesn't, but if I put into this Google box Forex tutorials, you're going to get more than you want. 500,000 results. I don't recommend anybody. I don't use Forex.com, but some people I know use them. Here you can get tutorials and educational videos. So there's an enormous amount of information out there. So yes, you can get more information. Okay, yeah, thanks, Jenny. You take care. I will say one other thing, since there aren't any questions. We tried many other approaches for up and down and pass, actually. For example, we did this early on with options, but as I said, it's the same thing. You can say, okay, I'll buy if the prediction is up, I'll buy this option in the morning and sell it in the evening. I don't like to leave things overnight if my stops are not in place, because there could be news. Anyway, imagine if you just said, I'm going to make uppy, buy in the morning, sell in the afternoon. That seems like a reasonable thing to do, and I know there are still people out there doing that. What we found was we had a good hit rate. It was at 65%, and we lost money. And the reason we lost money was the misses that we had were very large compared to the hits. There were a few large misses, which then made the net dollar amount be negative. So we feel very comfortable using this approach, which limits the losses that you'll have on misses. Okay, no more questions. Have we considered a group focusing on affecting the numbers to match up similarly to how we have manipulated random number generators? So that's a very long and interesting subject. Except for macro PK, it is not clear whether or not we are affecting the numbers in the random number generators. Small random number generators, let's say, generate 0 and 1 supposedly randomly, and then a person is asked, okay, now affect it to make it more ones, and in fact they can do that. What is no longer clear is whether or not they did use some sort of psychokinesis, PK, or whether they were using precognition of some sort. When did they press the button? When did the tasker, in fact, say, okay, now go make more? It's agreed in the community that you cannot tell the difference. In fact, Ed May wrote a paper which said that precognition is basically operating in almost all forms of ESP. Pretty much all forms except macro PK. He can't make the connection with macro PK. So, John, it's not clear how you would apply this. I suppose you could say, I want to make it up, put it in a buy order, and go for it, but it might be precognition anyway that caused you to say, let's make it go up. In any case, the ARV mindset is, I don't care. How it all comes together is in when I make my RV prediction. I just want it to be a really good match to the feedback time, whether or not my subconscious is using PK or witnessing it, which is the perspective I take. I take the perspective that it is sharing information of what actually happens, the truth point. I don't care how it got there, and I simply want it to describe and sketch the photo. It's one of the beauties of ARV. It finesses these kind of questions. Okay. So what I want to do now is describe the trade that I actually have already given to my other groups. And you as newbies, I first wanted to go over just what we've done. And now lay out the trade for you to do. So I will in fact put out an email to you. This was one to the financial group. I wanted to show you and just use this as an example of how you take what the intention is, and then just put it in a simple email like this. The tasking is often more detailed than you will see, because you as a remote viewer only care about describing and sketching your feedback target, and you'll get your coordinate when you click here. So we're going to begin a Forex trade this Sunday evening, okay, June 26th. So this is 2016, June 26th. I didn't even put in this first email, but it will be at 6 p.m. Is when this is going to start. So I'm going to actually put in a buy or sell at 6 p.m. Sunday night, and the maximum time that I'll let it go is to 1 p.m. on Friday. The market goes to 2 p.m. Pacific time. These are all Pacific time. That was 5 p.m. Eastern time. But I'm going to get out a bit earlier than that. The action at the close is, anyway, I'm going to get out earlier than that, and that's the definition of the trade. Now, I'm going to be using 100 pips, even though I say I do like and prefer a 24-hour time period, because I'm taking a break here for my anniversary. It was a perfect opportunity to do something that a lot of people have suggested I do, and I understand it and makes good sense to do, is why not go over a longer period of time where you feel very comfortable you'll hit, say, 100 pips. And in a week, we will, I feel with high confidence, go either up or down a 100 pip move from the 26th, 6 p.m. time that we get in. Now, the other thing which has to be specified is when your transcripts are due. And your transcripts will actually be due this Friday at 6 a.m. So that will give me, and I expect to, hope to, get a lot of transcripts, because I've given this to all of my groups. So I'm going to take some time Friday and Saturday. Actually, we're going to be driving Sunday to make a decision and then put in the trade. So that's the plan, and let's do it. I will send out the email now, but remember, I don't expect you to do it during this webinar. I do have a few more things I want to share before we end the webinar, but again, let me show you how I put out the email, and then at your leisure and when it feels really good and right, and you have time to do cool down the way you like to do cool down, this is due this Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, so we will go. Again, I'm now wearing my manager's hat. We're doing step 1. You know what I didn't do first? And I really do want to do this. No, I did the outcome, absolutely. Right? Or you would not have gotten your results. So we're now doing a new tasking for we. I'm doing this for the CARV group, which is you. Okay, you're seeing something. Now notice this says under over. That's because you guys usually do sports. What I do when I switch things like this is up or down. So under would switch to down. So it will show up that way. And this will go to up. And then I change the event name. Here, let me give me a moment here. If I put this over here, I'd like to make it as much like what I did here. So the event name is Forex AUD.USD, and the time, the event time is 06:26. All right, 6 p.m. So that's when it's going to go in. And this is when it's, oh. What I'm seeing here is the 25th, which is not Friday. It looks like this group at least was Saturday. I am going to make you guys Friday, right? Friday is, oh, that's tomorrow. Yeah, okay. There's no reason the groups have to be the same. I mean, the only issue is here balancing your time and my time. If I make you, I'll have to do, I'll make this the 25th, which is Saturday morning. So that's 2/16/06/25, 6 a.m. Okay. So that does it. So you now have it. I could have put more words like I did here. I should have said due Saturday, but yours is due Saturday. And you should have that now in your email box. Good. It'll be the second, third, and fourth places. That is correct. So if you're looking at prices, and there are a lot of places you don't even have to have a count. If you write in Australian dollar, US dollar, AUD.USD, real-time quotes, you'll be able to get real-time quotes. I, in fact, have an app on my smartphone that gives me real-time quotes. I mean, this information is out there. This is a huge market. Very good. Okay. Now, I want to just discuss a few more things here. Basically because I have a little time, A, I knew I would have a little time, and B, I really want new people who are looking at this to get deep in their gut, deep in their being, that we as human beings have this capability of precognition, as well as other amazing capabilities far in excess of what kind of the normal society would accept. And I thought of one way of showing that to you is that plants have this capability as well. And this is an interesting example where they have discovered that photosynthesis in plants, which is 95% efficient in terms of the energy that falls on the equivalent of leaves on plants actually gets efficiently used, as opposed to about half of that in our best engineering approaches so far, using solar cells and that sort of thing. The plants use quantum, and I don't want to get technical here, but they use this concept of non-locality superposition, which means instead of, and this comes from a paper here, instead of following a single trajectory like the electrons on a silicon chip, which is what we're doing, the energy in photosynthesis explores all of its options. How can these electrons move in this plant system, and collapses the quantum process only after the fact, retroactively deciding. That's precognition. I mean, it's like it's connected to the future after reviewing all the possibilities, and then makes the most efficient decision. So it chooses to actually send that electron in the most efficient way at that particular time when it's able to make the choice. What does this all mean? Not only does quantum phenomena occur in living systems, plants, and you, but the basic processes of life we take for granted rely on the transfer of information backwards in time. Precognition. That's a repeat of what was said right here. And I like this guy's summary. Life is so magical because it cheats. I didn't print this here because one of the things which I'm afraid is going to happen in the consciousness paradigm shift that we are at the beginning of now is that some people are going to say, hey, you guys are somehow cheating. You're using precognition to do better in the market than we can do, to win at more sports games than we can do. And I think we're just going to have to deal with that, because we know it is in fact not cheating. It's a natural capability of consciousness. Hey, when you use your vision, you're not cheating. When you use your intellect, you're not cheating. Using your precognition is not cheating. It, in fact, is doing what's a very logical and reasonable kind of thing, which is a natural capability of consciousness. Let me take this example one further with other words from people who have looked at this. Engel was one of the physicists involved in this, told PhysicWeb that this means the excitation, okay, that's where the energy and say this electron goes, can find the optimal route to the reaction center without wasting energy through random hopping. In effect, the excitation can feel, okay, using the feeling component, we would understand that. It's hard to understand how a plant does that, but we can kind of get that. In effect, the excitation can feel these many states at once without having to visit them individually. So it feels all its options and chooses the best one. So this is a practical application for the plant of superposition, where it kind of looks at all the choices, maybe perhaps like the choices of up or down, the choices of what the pictures might be, because we do see that the consciousness does seem to pick, seems to look at both, whether we like it or not. It has access to all the possibilities. So it has access to both of the potential targets, but then in the plant, it chooses the best one, which is the one to get most of the energy. And for us, we can choose the actual target at feedback time. Hey, this is this is the way our world works. This is the way the universe works. The world is quantum. I'm going to show you this one. Richard Feynman, who got a Nobel laureate award from Caltech, our part of the world. He's very, very famous, was in the news a lot. Anyway, he showed that a classical computer, so the computers that we're on now, are deterministic. I mean, they do exactly what you say. Sometimes it's very frustrating because you always want to blame the computer when something doesn't go right, and 99.999% of the time it's your problem, not the computer's problem. You know, it did what you told it to do. And that involves at the programming level, that involves at the user level. So it's deterministic. So it can never do what is called non-locality, which is what we're doing. Non-locality means you can connect with the future, connect with the past instantly. So precognition can't be done by a robot who is being run by a classical computer. So it can never simulate the human mind. Turns out you, in a very real way, are a quantum computer. I didn't use that word here, but a computer is not a bad thing when you realize that it has all the capabilities of quantum mechanics, and it includes self-programming. So what you really are is a conscious, quantum, self-programming living being. I believe that's an appropriate way of, you know, viewing yourself. You're lots of different things, but this is one way of viewing what's going on, and it certainly fits with the fact that we do precognition. Here's my close. All of this is really leading for all of us to really live healthier, wealthier, and wiser lives. So with that, I'll close this and open up everything for questions and comments. You can click, you can put it in the chat box or click on your mic on the attendance list and we can talk or not. I think you got the information. Are we trying to pair up photo sites that have the same impact to eliminate displacement? Remember there was some research in this area. We are going through that process right now, and I would love, we need more help. APP is totally a voluntary organization. We can use more help in that, but we have a targeting group set up. It did a little work last year. I count my years from one app meeting to the next. But we are going to continue, and any of you, John, especially since you understand this, you would be terrific to become part of the targeting group. And we even had one analysis that looked at all the time the target pairs were brought up, and we have stats on how many times they had hits versus misses. So the answer is we are looking at this, and the aesthetic emotional impact balance is a reasonable thing to do. So that's one of the things we look at, but it's more complicated than that. Well, we've done analysis on existing pairs looking at the data. Now we have 800 pairs, so the data typically is for one pair we might only have 5 or 6 times that it's actually come up since we has been around. But where we have all this data, see, that's the beauty of keeping data is you can do things like this. But with 100, with 800 ones, typically we've had them come up maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and we can look, and if it's been a miss, say 6 out of 8 times, well, then we have some reason to believe that that particular pair and maybe the one side that was the actual feedback that wasn't properly chosen is not a good target. And so we look at that, and that's part of the judgment of getting rid of the old ones. So we're trying to get rid of the bad ones and replace them with much better ones. So it's part analysis and part subjective with the understanding of we do believe, and we didn't always believe this, that boring targets are in fact worse. However, the definition of boring is not the same for all people. A beautiful rose is not boring to certain people. Certain people have smelled the rose in the target. So it's just complex. Also, you don't want to make it too limiting, like saying all we're going to do are action scenes, because then it gets very quickly front-loaded. Now, they'll always say action scenes. And then the other component to this is the good viewers don't care. They can do even what they might consider boring targets. They can certainly do the geometry of it. They can do the shapes, colors, whatever. Ingo Swann was once tasked with ARV to do 2 different kinds of graph paper. So I don't want to limit it too much. It's a complicated issue, and I'd love you and anybody else to email me and say, hey, I'd really like to be on this targeting, be part of this targeting group. What sites do you recommend to make the Forex trades? Well, I do know that Forex.com has a low initial buy-in, but I know very little else about them. And Interactive Brokers is what we use. I do know they are very good. I believe, I haven't done it, but you could probably do it. You could probably do a search with Google. In fact, let's do it. Hell, it's just as easy to do it as to talk about it. Evaluation of Forex companies. I'd like a consumer report kind of thing. Forex ratings. Now can I believe them? I don't know, but here's a place that tried to do it. There's Forex.com. It's not as high as FX Pro, but do I know that FX Pro isn't involved with this evaluation? I don't know that. There was one here. ForexTraders.com. There's another one. FXTM. See, so I just do not know, like I trust consumers report on appliances and stuff like that. I don't know if you can trust anybody here. I do know that Forex.com has been around a long time. I have seen their trading platform, and it's okay. It's pretty good. Period. So I'm not going to take any responsibility for it. There are lots of choices out there, and I think you need to do your own kind of research. Same thing. After doing some research, I have used bookmaker.eu. Some people use and seem to be happy with 5 dimes. I don't remember if it's .eu or .com. I'm trying to think of another one. There are a few others that people use. If you ask the discussion group, hey, what offshore accounts are you using? Yeah, Bovada is another one I've heard of. So those are kind of 3 choices. Okay. Just excuse me for a minute. This might be important as I call back. Hello? Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I've got an aging mother, and the fact that it was a double call was something I had to respond to. It turns out it was Russ Targ, so I'll call him back. He's got this new movie out, Third Eye Spies, which if you want to know something about the history, definitely trace that down. Third Eye Spies, because you will learn about the history of remote viewing. He was in it from the very beginning, and he talks to all the people, and it's a very, very good summary. We actually showed it at App 2016, and he's previewing it, I think, actually this week. So, and then it should be available, I don't know where, but we'll find out. And when we find out, we'll certainly let you know. Okay, John, okay, yeah, right, you saw it. Anybody else, questions, comments? Okay, fine. Can you make me the presenter? Yes, John, good. Yes, why don't you show that? I can. Wait, let me find you here. There you are. And okay, so you should have something on your screen now that'll say I'll become the presenter. You have to give a yes, because everybody will now suddenly see your screen. There you go. I see you, feedback technique, and everybody is now seeing your screen, John. And you don't have a mic, or do you? Okay, so we'll just read it and you can put stuff in the chat box. I think that's great. I just read it. I think that will open up this channel, communication channel. Hugs are good. But, it's the kind of thing that you just need to personally feel. But yes, thank you. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I think I took it back. And I don't want to mute myself. Well, let me see. Is there anything else that we can be doing here? Very good then. I really appreciate you coming. Thank you for coming. And do keep precogging.